July 13th, 1940. 18 miles off the English coast, over the Channel. The sun hung low and blood-red over the water as 20 Heinkel He-111 bombers cruised north in tight formation. Their engines droned like thunder behind the hum of the wind. Inside the lead bomber, Oberleutnant Friedrich Keller adjusted his goggles and glanced at his wristwatch. 1830 hours, he murmured. London by sunset. His radio man gave a thumbs up. No sign of fighters. Herr Oberleutnant. For weeks, Keller's squadron had flown night raids and dawn assaults with impunity. The Luftwaffe called it Unternehmen Adlerangriff, Operation Eagle Attack, a campaign to break the RAF before the planned invasion of Britain. Their commanders promised England has no eyes after dark. But tonight, the English sky was not as blind as it seemed. 100 miles to the north, on a bluff above the Suffolk coast, a series of tall steel towers blinked faintly in the evening light. They looked like crude radio masts. Nothing more but inside the low concrete bunkers beneath them. The future of warfare hummed softly. Bawdsey Manor Radar Station. Sergeant Margaret Peg Hill, one of the WAF radar operators, leaned over her cathode ray display. A faint green line swept in a slow circle, glowing and fading. For a moment, the screen was empty, then small ripples appeared near the edge of the trace. She frowned. Sector 4. I'm getting echoes at 150 bearing. Altitude 2,000 feet and climbing. Her supervisor, Flight Lieutenant Ewan Roberts, leaned over her shoulder. Range 80 miles, closing fast. Roberts's pulse quickened. That's no weather anomaly. Mark it. He reached for the field telephone. This is Bawdsey. Raid incoming. Estimate 20+ aircraft, heading northwest toward Dover. Over. Moments later, his report reached Fighter Command headquarters at Bentley Priory, where Air Vice Marshal Keith Park bent over a massive plotting table covered in grids and colored markers. He tapped a wooden pointer against the map. Scramble Biggin Hill and Manston. Sector 11 intercepts in 5 minutes. To anyone watching, it looked like an organized ballet of information, but to Park, it felt like gambling with the fate of his island. Let's see, he said quietly, if our new eyes can keep up with their claws. Down at Biggin Hill, pilots sprinted across the tarmac as sirens wailed. Mechanics waved frantically, fueling and arming their aircraft. The squadron leader Peter Townsend, shouted over the roar of engines. Spitfire Section A. Take off and climb to 15,000 feet. We've got company over Dover. Within 90 seconds, 12 Supermarine Spitfires screamed into the air, their Rolls-Royce Merlin engines howling. Their wings caught the sunset like blades of gold. At altitude, condensation streaked behind them, a fragile signature of Britain's defense. Through his headset, Townsend heard ground control. Bandits, Vector 170 Angels 15. You're clear to engage. He grinned beneath his oxygen mask. Roger that, Bawdsey. Let's go hunting. Below them, Keller's formation crossed the Kent coastline. He peered through his bomb sight, watching the green fields slide beneath. Prepare for release. Run. We'll strike the airfield at West Malling. No resistance reported. But then something strange. One of his escorting Messerschmitt Bf 109S broke formation. Veering left sharply, another followed. What the devil are they? Keller started, then saw its silver flashes diving out of the sun. Spitfires. 6 of them. Then 8. Then 12, slicing down from the clouds like falcons. Fighters. 11 o'clock high, shouted the tail gunner. Keller slammed the intercom switch. Evasive maneuvers drop altitude. Now, tracer rounds ripped past his cockpit, glowing red in the dusk. One Spitfire overshot, looping upward in a tight roll, its pilot silhouetted by the setting sun. Keller could see the RAF roundel glinting on the fuselage. How had they known they were waiting positioned perfectly for the intercept? Within minutes, the sky above Kent was a battlefield of streaking light and falling wrecks. The bomber's tight formation disintegrated under the assault. Smoke trails spiraled downward. On the ground, British radar operators listened as the radio chatter confirmed their readings. Bawdsey, this is Biggin Hill. Visual contact confirmed, tally-ho engaging now. Peg Hill allowed herself a single exhale. The green blips on her screen had turned into victories. By the time the first bombers limped back across the channel, half of Keller's formation was gone. At his base in France, when he reported to his superior, Major Adolf Gallen, the older officer asked only one question. How did they find you? Keller shook his head. We flew in silence, under cloud cover, at night. Yet they came straight for us. It's as if they saw us long before we saw them. Gallen frowned. Then perhaps they can... July 14th, 1940. Bawdsey Manor, Suffolk. Morning mist rolled across the lawn of the old estate. Its stone towers, once home to Edwardian nobility, now bristled with antennas, cables, and humming generators. Inside, under blackout curtains and the glow of oscilloscopes, a new kind of soldier fought a new kind of war. Flight Lieutenant Ewan Roberts leaned over a teapot gone cold, his uniform collar unbuttoned. He hadn't slept in 2 days. The night's results were clear. Radar had worked too well. The Luftwaffe's silent bombers had flown straight into the teeth of prepared RAF squadrons and paid for it in fire and wreckage. He looked at the green trace still pulsing across the screen. Each sweep of the cathode ray tube was a heartbeat, not of a man, but of a nation that had found its pulse again. Never thought a handful of waves in the air could save lives, he muttered. Not just waves, came a voice from the doorway. Dr. Robert Watson Watt, the Scottish engineer who had turned theory into Britain's shield, stepped into the bunker. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his eyes bright with fatigue. He had come down from London to witness the result of his creation firsthand. Those echoes, you see, Watson Watt said softly, are history's first glimpse of invisible enemies. and the first proof that we can find them. That morning, as the operators recalibrated the transmitter towers, the horizon shimmered with heat. Beyond it lay Germany and the promise of another wave of bombers. Roberts approached the scientist. "Sir, the Luftwaffe will realize something happened last night. They won't fly blind again." Watson Watt nodded. "No. They'll try to jam the frequencies, confuse the signals, fly low over the water. But they don't understand. Radar isn't a single eye. It's a chain." He gestured toward the map pinned to the wall. A series of dots stretched along the southern coast: Ventnor, Rye, Pevensey, Bawdsey, Orfordness. Each was a listening post, linked by telephone and radio, feeding the heartbeat of Britain's early warning system, Chain Home. "Even if one goes dark," he said, tapping the map, "the others will see." Outside, the hum of the transmitters deepened as voltage surged through copper coils. The towers crackled faintly, invisible energy fanning out across the channel, searching for wings and steel. At Bentley Priory, Air Vice Marshal Hugh Dowding, commander of RAF Fighter Command, received the night's after-action reports. He sat stiffly behind his desk, his face gray with exhaustion, but his mind razor-sharp. 17 Heinkels destroyed, 5 damaged, 4 confirmed kills by radar intercept, his adjutant read aloud. Dowding placed a hand on the chart before him, a sprawling network of lines, arrows, and colored tiles representing the real-time air picture fed from every station. "So it works," he murmured. "The system works." He rose, walking to the plotting table. "Gentlemen, you must understand what this means. We can now fight the enemy before he even reaches our skies. This war will not be won by numbers, but by information." The officers around him exchanged glances. It was the first time anyone had spoken of victory without irony since Dunkirk. That evening, across the channel at Calais Mark Airfield, Oberst Hermann Göring's staff officers gathered beneath a canvas canopy. Charts, weather maps, and cigarette smoke filled the air. Major Gallen stood before them, pointing at a map of southern England littered with red X's, yesterday's losses. "Their fighters appear as if summoned." Gallen said, "They climb directly into our path, no matter the hour or weather. Our reconnaissance planes spotted tall radio towers along their coast. Perhaps it's some kind of detection system." One colonel scoffed. "Nonsense. Radio can't see airplanes. England is bluffing." Gallen didn't smile. "Then how do they know where to find us every single time?" The room fell silent. Back at Bawdsey, the operators were already tracking the next raid. A faint cluster of echoes appeared near the French coast, small, sharp, and growing stronger. Peg Hill squinted at her display. 30 contacts this time. They're learning to fly lower. Roberts picked up the phone to Bentley Priory. "Raid approaching Dover. Multiple squadrons. Recommend scramble immediately." Dowding's voice came through, clipped and calm. "Understood. Send in 56 Squadron, and tell your people well done." Within minutes, Hurricanes from Tangmere clawed into the dusk, engines roaring. Beneath them, the fields of Kent glowed gold in the dying sun. Radar had seen the enemy again, long before human eyes could. As the Luftwaffe formations reached the English coast, they expected darkness and surprise. Instead, flak erupted around them like volcanic hail. Spitfires swooped from the clouds, diving straight through the bomber stream. Keller, once again at the controls of his Heinkel, could hardly believe it. "They're waiting for us again," he shouted into his mic. How we flew under the clouds, over the channel, no lights. Tracer fire lit up the night. The sky itself seemed to turn against him. By midnight, most of his squadron was gone, scattered into the channel or burning on the cliffs below Dover. Keller's own bomber limped back to France, one engine trailing smoke, the other coughing sparks. At Calais, as he climbed from his shattered cockpit, he stared east toward the black expanse of the sea. Somewhere beyond that horizon, he knew the English were listening. "Whatever it is they've built," he whispered, "it can hear death coming." August 15th, 1940. Over the English Channel, darkness cloaked the sea. Only the drone of engines disturbed the stillness, hundreds of them. The Luftwaffe had returned, determined to drown Britain under a tidal wave of steel and fire. They came in waves Dornier Du 17 as Heinkel Hell 111 as, and Junkers Ju 88 ES, their bomb bays loaded, their formation tight and confident. From his cockpit, Oberleutnant Friedrich Keller could see the glow of the French coast fading behind him. The sky ahead was empty, calm, silent, inviting. He keyed his radio. "Maintain altitude 2000. We strike London in 1 hour. No radio chatter after this." The crews obeyed. The black channel stretched below like a void. And then the silence began to lie. At Bawdsey Manor, the operators had been waiting for this. The night shift was already on alert. The moment the radar screens lit up with faint signals crawling out of the static, Sergeant Peg Hill leaned forward, eyes wide. "They're coming again," she said softly. "A big one this time. Bearing 140, closing at 180 miles. Lieutenant Roberts adjusted the gain on the console, filtering out sea clutter. The faint pips multiplied. 40 contacts. No, more. At least 70 aircraft. He picked up the field phone. Bawdsey to filter room. Raid approaching from Pas de Calais. Estimated strength major formation. A crisp female voice came back immediately. Acknowledged. Bawdsey. Plotters are marking now. At Bentley Priory. Air Vice Marshal Keith Park watched as colored counters spread across the massive operations table, moving westward like an invading tide. Each represented dozens of bombers. Around him, WAF plotters updated the map every few seconds, a living, breathing radar readout in human form. Orders scramble for No. 11 Group, Biggin Hill, Hornchurch, and Kenley to intercept. On the ground, the alarm bells began to scream. Searchlights flicked on. Pilots ran. Mechanics primed engines. The night air filled with the scent of aviation fuel and the rising scream of Merlin engines. At Kenley Airfield, Squadron Leader Douglas Bader, his metal prosthetic legs clanging against the ladder, climbed into his Hurricane. Through the headset came the calm voice of ground control. Bandits, Vector 160, Angels 15. Intercept over Maidstone. Roger that, Bader replied. He smiled grimly. Let's spoil their evening. Meanwhile, over the channel, Keller's bomber group pressed on. Below, the water was invisible, just the dark breathing of the sea. His navigator checked their course by stopwatch and compass. Another 20 minutes, he said. Keller nodded. England sleeps. But even as he said it, the English did not sleep. They were watching. Back at Bawdsey, Peg Hill noticed something unusual. The signals on her screen, once scattered dots, now rippled into long, rhythmic arcs. They're spreading formation, she said. They're preparing to bomb. Roberts reached for the phone again. Filter room. The raid's beginning descent. Over London sector. Miles away. In the black sky above Kent. Spitfires and Hurricanes climbed through the clouds like silent ghosts. They were guided not by chance, but by coordinates relayed every minute from the radar stations. Each pilot knew exactly where to find his target, even in the dark. Keller's radio man stiffened suddenly. Contacts behind us. What? Keller snapped. Impossible. But then flashes. Tiny specks of light at first, then growing, flaring. Tracers. He banked hard left. The formation dissolved into chaos. Searchlights from the coast erupted like spears through the darkness, catching the underbellies of the bombers as Spitfires swooped in from above. Machine guns raked the night. The air became a storm of fire and metal. Keller's gunner screamed into the intercom. We're surrounded. How could they? He never finished. A burst of .303 rounds tore through the tail. Flames blossomed behind them, licking the fuselage. Keller fought the controls. Drop the bombs. Lighten her up. Below, one of the Heinkels exploded in a white-orange bloom, scattering debris across the channel. Another spiraled into the Thames estuary, vanishing in a flash. At RAF Uxbridge, where Air Vice Marshal Park coordinated all of No. 1, Bawdsey 11 group. The plotting table showed the battle unfolding in real time. The colored markers representing British fighters merged with the red counters of the German formations. A controller called out Biggin Hill reports visual contact. They've engaged Hornchurch, confirms enemy bombers breaking formation. Park exhaled slowly. Good. Keep the pressure on them. He turned to his adjutant. We're fighting this war with mathematics and electricity. And it's working. Back over the channel, Keller's bomber was dying. His fuel gauge dropped. His engines coughed. In the distance, he could see the glow of burning aircraft falling toward the sea. He looked north, to where England's dark coast was already fading behind him. Streaked by searchlights, they knew he said quietly. They knew we were coming before we took off. When he landed back in France just before dawn, he found half his squadron missing. Charred bombers littered the perimeter of Calais Mark airfield. He walked toward Major Gallen's command tent, still dazed. Gallen didn't ask for a report. He just looked up from his map and said, "They've found a way to see us." Keller nodded numbly. We were never invisible. That morning, German intelligence officers examined aerial photos of the English coast, the tall metal towers, the strange huts at their bases, the cables running inland. Radio towers, one analyst said dismissively. But Gallen shook his head. No, he murmured. Those are their eyes. He turned toward the channel, where the first light of day crept over the horizon. And last night, he said, almost to himself, those eyes never blinked. At Bawdsey, Peg Hill stepped outside for a breath of fresh air as dawn broke. The sky glowed pink above the manor. She could hear the hum of the generators behind her, steady and alive. She rubbed her hands together, looking toward the distant sea. Somewhere out there, the enemy was retreating again, broken, bewildered. Watson Watt joined her, his coat buttoned against the chill. They'll come again, she said quietly. Yes, he replied, but next time, we'll see them coming too. The wind carried the faint buzz of the radar masts, the heartbeat of a new kind of warfare. That night, radar didn't just save Britain. It changed the future of every battle that would follow.